Here we are on the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago in the southern Caribbean. And today we're going to discuss the ecosystem services, ecosystem functioning, and threats to the Caroni Swamp. Now, the Caroni Swamp is the largest saltwater wetland in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's on the northwest coast of Trinidad. Now, first of all, I want to give you an idea of the wider geographical area because it's important to have a concept of some of the external influences that are going to impact the swamp. Now, to the south, we have the Amazon River. The Amazon River is releasing vast quantities of sediment-laden fresh water into the Atlantic. And the way that the currents work in the Atlantic, the water is pushed up the coast of South America. Now, this water is then going to meet water coming out of the Orinoco River in Venezuela and Guyana. Again, this river is highly sedimentary, and all of this turbid water drifts up to the coast of Trinidad and comes into the Gulf of Paria, where it circulates around. It also comes up the east coast, and you even get it up into Tobago. It starts to get a bit clearer in Tobago then. Now, as well as the sediment-laden water, we also should be aware of the extent of the mangroves in Venezuela. Because when we discuss the functioning of the Caroni Swamp as nursery habitat for fisheries in the Gulf of Paria, it's important to be aware there's actually a vast expanse of wetlands in Venezuela. So it's quite hard to separate out the contribution of the Caroni Swamp to the fisheries in this area from this massive area of mangroves. So as we focus on the swamp, we can see that to the north is quite considerable urban development. We have the capital to the northwest, and then all along here is what we call the east-west corridor, and then to the east is agricultural land, and to the southeast we have the third largest capital, which is Chaguanas, third largest city. Now, this is the Caroni River. The Caroni River here passes all the way along much of the diameter of Trinidad and is in fact the catchment for most of the northern range. So in the northern range of hills here, all the rainfall is ending up kind of passing through the urban areas and entering into this Caroni River. Now, the downside of that is huge amounts of litter. So this is the mouth of the Caroni River, and as you can see there's huge quantities of trash floating down, and it's actually going on indefinitely, and various types of plastics. Soil washes into the Caroni River from forests and agricultural land. So we can see here from the mouth that all of that sediment being carried in the water is deposited here in the mudflats at the mouth. Now, these mudflats are very productive due to all the detritus that's being carried down in the river. And we have caimans basking along the riverbanks. We have scarlet ibis, blue heron, snowy egrets, and great egrets, all feeding on invertebrates in the sediments, as well as shorebirds that migrate from the United States and other. Fishermen will use this river. They'll come down here and then they'll pass through the channels to get out into the Gulf of Paria to exploit the various resources. Most of the fishing in this area is going to be for shrimp, because the shrimp will be, using the protective habitat of the swamp. Again, there's a question of whether the shrimp and the larvae are coming from South American wetlands, but we don't really know that. The technique of shrimp trawling is incredibly damaging to the seabed. They drag nets along the bottom, capturing all manner of fish, and I think they're estimating it's about 95% bycatch of different species, so it's a huge amount of waste. Now into the central part we have a reserve. So everything south of the Blue River here is a protected area. So this is all theoretically protected. And that occurs all the way down to the Madame Espagnole River here. So this is the southern border of the reserve. Inside the reserve we have various lagoons. These lagoons here are connected. As we get more landward, they get more freshwater lagoons, and we get tilapia. In the center here is where we have the ibis tours. This island right here, in fact, is where all the ibis come and roost for the night, as well as the egrets and the blue heron. They all choose one island, which we believe is because they get more protection from predators. Supposedly they move every 6 years. I'm not quite sure if that's true. They move to a different island, but it might just be because they get disturbed. There is hunting for scarlet ibis and other animals in the swamp. Now, the Division of Drainage tried to reduce flood risk in the Caroni River catchment by straightening the channel. So this is obviously straightened and dredged, and you can see all the dredged material left over on the left there. They've cut drainage channels here, these very straight channels. The problem with this is, one, that it fragments the swamp, but also it takes away a lot of the habitat, because rivers need to meander, they need to move around. That creates the nooks and crannies that animals need as habitat. So as soon as you straighten it and make it all streamlined, then you're taking away a lot of the habitat. There are various isolated lagoons here which are going to be hypersaline because they're not going to get fed by the tide as much as other areas. They're probably going to get water on the super high spring tides. And there's also very large areas of forest here that we don't know too much of what's occurring, how much of that is getting flooded or not. Something that some of my research is going to investigate. Now, the trees along the coast here also provide roosting sites and perch sites for osprey and pelicans and frigate birds, all of which move out into the Gulf to feed on fish. And then here we have the visitor centre, which is the starting point for the tours. This is also the site of forestry department, although they generally lack capacity and don't seem to be accomplishing too much. Recreational fisheries are also important in the area, not just as a food source, but also as a cultural heritage. Tilapia fishing, which you can see happening here, as well as fishing for Goliath grouper, although this gentleman put the fish back, and mangrove snapper, which also seem to be in season right now. And that is pretty much a rough guide to the Caroni Swamp. I'll leave you with some references of a few of the photos that I had to borrow off the internet, and I hope you enjoyed it.